Hi my reading friends, and welcome to my March and April reading wrap up. So this video is going to be a little different from the ones that I have done so far this year. Obviously because they're 2 months put together, which is not what I am planning to do. I really would like to do one video every month, but I just had a bit of an odd March, which we'll get to. But also because I am just going to I'm only going to go through it in my reading journal this time. I just don't have the time to kind of get organized and ready for like a sit down video. And then I also feel like sit down videos are hard because I read every book on my Kindle, and the sit down videos that I watch, like, they have the physical copy of pretty much every book they read and they like show it, and I don't know, I just feel like it's awkward when I don't have many of the books that I read because I read them all on Kindle. So this is how I've always done my videos, in a bird's eye view of my hands. And we're going to see how this goes. So this will be, as I said, March and April, because March I didn't have the best reading month. For anyone who doesn't know, March is my birthday month. It is also my wedding anniversary month, and I had a lot going on and I just didn't have a whole lot of opportunity. Well, I didn't have as much opportunity, let's say, to read. That's my February, which you've already seen, to read as I have in other months. So I knew it was coming. I knew it was going to be a lower month. And it's fine. It is what it is. But it's definitely a lower month for me. So I do have my stats on here. I also have my story graph summary, which I will run through in a second, and I'll put it on the screen when I do. So I read 5 books. I read 2,660 pages, 22 out of 31 days read, so that was quite a low number. And my average rating was 4.5 stars, which obviously is extremely high, but it's because I only read 5 books, and so it was quite easily swayed, I guess. Looking at my calendar, you can probably see, well, you could probably can tell, I read Spark of the Everflame from the 2nd to the 5th of the month. I then read Glow from the 5th to the 7th, and Heat from the 7th to the 13th. And then there's a number of days in a row that I didn't read. And then I picked up The Stolen Queen, and it took me forever to read a 400-page book. I had another non-reading time, and then I picked up Stalking Jack the Ripper on these days, which I've just forgot to fill out. So yeah, I read 5 books, just looking at my story graph, 2,660 pages, average rating 4.5 stars. I read 3 were categorized as fantasy, 3 romance, 2 historical, 2 mystery, and then 1 thriller, and I only read fiction, so all fiction. My average book length actually is quite high at 541 pages. Normally that's more like closer to 300, which makes sense because I read some fucking long book. Well, one especially long book, but yeah, I did still read. Like 2,600 pages is still a lot for 5 books, considering like in Feb I read 8 books and read 3,300 pages. So I was still reading a lot. I just, number of books wise, wasn't so much. So those are my stats. Now let's get into the books that I read. And I guess it's just a general kind of spoiler warning. I'll do my best to avoid spoilers, but I'm not going to claim that to be perfect. So if you don't want to know about any of the books that you see or you hear, you're probably not the right video for you, but I will do my best. So the first book that I read in March was called Spark of the Everflame, and this is part of the Kindred's Curse saga. And I'll give you a bit of backstory. So I listen to a podcast that deep dives fantasy, like generally romantasy books, and they bring out an episode a week of like different chapter stretches. So they've done the ACOTAR series, and they just finished up with Onyx Storm. And the next series they're going to review starting, actually the day that I'm filming this, it starts this week. Is this in focus? Yes. They're starting the Kindred's Curse saga. And so this was announced, I think, in December. So I've known for like 5 months that this was coming. But a whole new 3-book, not yet finished 4th book romantasy series is so overwhelming to me. Like, I just was like, no, I can't do that. Is this still out of focus? That's too much. I can't commit to it, and I put it off, and I put it off. It was on my TBR, and I just kept moving it. And then I just decided, I don't know why, in March, I was like, you know what? We're just going to read it. And I do not know why it took me so long, because this is my new Roman Empire. This is ACOTAR 4th wing level to me. Like, we're in that kind of realm of all-time favorite series. Obviously, ACOTAR holds a very special place in my heart because it brought me back into reading and introduced me to, like, what reading could be as an adult. So it has, like, different feelings. But in terms of the series, this was like, we were back there. Like, we were really... I devoured the whole series, which was like 2,500 pages in 11 days. And I just I'd finish one and I'd start the next one. I actually had a really hard time doing my Goodreads review because I couldn't remember where one book finished and the next one started because I just read them all in one go. So the first book is called Spark of the Everflame, and this is like the story of DM, who is a mortal, obviously, in a world that mortals are not, like, they're the lower class, obviously, as all romantasy ever is. But the first book is kind of set, like, it goes through the story of the mortal world and how the differences are between the Descended, who are like in ACOTAR, I guess, like the Fae and the humans. It's like the Descended and the mortals. The ruling class, the powerful, the beautiful, like, and then the mortals are just trash, essentially. And obviously DM is more than a mortal, and you kind of get little hints along the way, and you know she's not normal, but she's just denying it, and she's like literally in denial. And then on the very last word of the book, like, this huge plot point happens that then sets up the rest of the series. And I was listening to an interview with the author recently, and she said that apparently the book series was supposed to start at this, like, big key moment, and if you've read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But then she decided to go back and actually give more of a context and, like, so you kind of knew who she was before this happened. And I think that was absolutely the right move. I don't think it would have hit as hard without the context of who she was, her family, her relationships, the environment that she was in, etc., if, like, without the first book. So the first book's all about setting the scene. She meets our dear friend Luther Courbois, I can never say that, and you kind of know that this is where things are going. Like, I've read enough romantasy to know the Shadow Daddy, obviously, who on face value doesn't like her, but is definitely doing things behind the scenes to protect her. We know where we're going. And there's this, obviously, like, annoying human that she's with that we know is not the right person for her. So it has all of, like, it is a romantasy book through and through, and I ate it up. Like, I really ate it up. So that was the first one, and I rated that 5 stars because I do not have a bad thing to say about it. The second book is called Glow of the Everflame, and I actually gave this my #1 book of March. However, it could have gone to any of the 3. I love them all equally. I'll explain why I picked Glow at the end, but Glow is obviously the second book in the series, so that, like, big life-altering event has happened, and then it's all about how DM handles that and the aftermath and the growth that she goes through. And you kind of start to see her really, like, she's clearly not a human or a mortal, but she has obviously lived as a mortal, and that's what she believes in, and so it's her like being torn between the two like parts of society and parts of her, I guess. Again, I won't go into it any more in depth, but it just, I don't know, I loved it so much. And then Heat is the third book, and there's one more coming, but this is the last one that's out at the moment. And this is over 1,100 pages long, and I feel like it probably could have been a little bit shorter. I still gave it 5 stars because I absolutely loved it. This is where we expand the world. So this is where it's actually kind of similar to like ACOTAR, in that in A Court of Wings and Ruin is when the world expands and we meet the other High Lords and learn about like more about their magic and their realms are in here, their courts and that sort of thing. This is what happens in this series, but it like really expands because DM and Luther like travel to these places and you really get a feel for the people, the magic. I really love how like their environment shapes their magic. It's like really reflective of the place that you're in as to what magic you possess. I really found this super interesting. This could have been my #1 book for March, but this is how I was thinking, how do I explain the difference? So Heat, I loved, the bits I loved them more, but then there was also bits that I didn't love. Whereas Glow, I loved everything. Like it was a perfect book, if that makes sense. Whereas Heat, yes, there was bits that I loved more than Glow, but there was also bits I liked less. Does that make any sense? So I feel like that's why I went with Glow, but I honestly could have gone with Heat. I could have gone with Spark, but Spark is like the introduction book, so it just doesn't feel like the #1 heavy hitter of the series. But it really could have gone to any of these. I cannot wait for Burn. It was supposed to come out last year, but it got delayed. And now it's supposed to come out this year, but there's no confirmed date yet. So I will wait forever for this book because I love it. I really suggest, if you're a classic romantasy girly, like you love the romantasy tropes, read this series. If you don't, and you think like you're a high fantasy person and you don't love so much the tropiness of a romantasy, I wouldn't go near it. It's very trope heavy, but I ate it up. It also is an extremely slow burn romance, which, if you know me, that is not me. I need action, I need spice, I need flirtation, I need heat. And this is not this series. However, I absolutely ate it up. I loved the slow burn and the setup and the yearning and the will they, won't they. Like I'm gonna shut up now because I feel like it's been 10 minutes of talking about this series. But give it a go. This is the map, so I used that. And then this is DM and Luther, so I used those. And then that is why you see I started the month extremely strong and then I just went off the deep end. Anything I thought about reading, well, it's not DM, it's not Luther. It's not The Kindred's Curse. I don't want to read it. And so I really was just like, I don't know what to pick up. So then I picked up The Stolen Queen, and as you can see, it took me a long time to read a book that's only 400-ish pages long. But I rated it 4-star, and I actually really enjoyed it. And this is the book that, for me, solidified historical fiction is my favorite genre. And to an extent, historical fantasy, but historical fiction mainly. And specifically, historical fiction that is dual timeline between like an older timeline and then a current, or not even current, like a newer timeline. That is my absolute favorite micro genre. And I'm really glad that this book solidified that for me. So this is called The Stolen Queen by Fiona Davis. And this is a historical fiction with a dual timeline set in so it's between the Age of Discovery in Egypt, which, a side note, is my favorite, #1 favorite setting for a book, like between like 1880 and 1930 in Egypt. when like the British were occupying Egypt, and it was all about the race to who can discover the most. That is my favorite thing to read about. And so that's when the one timeline is set, and then the second timeline is set, I think, in the 70s in New York, which was just a really cool mix of settings. So the 1970s version is set around the Met Gala, which, like, amazing. And then obviously the Age of Discovery, so I think it was in 1936, I want to say, is the original timeline. And this is what I want to read about. This is my favorite thing to read. And then at the end, the kind of timelines intersect, essentially. So it's about like an artifact that was actually stolen in the 1970s timeline, and it's kind of going back and forth between what is this artifact, who did it belong to, and what does it mean? And then, as I said, it all kind of comes together that actually the old and the new timeline are joined and linked, of course, and it kind of comes out why. But yeah, just like a short and sharp historical fiction set in my favorite time. I have also added a number of Fiona Davis's other books to my TBR because she is a exclusively historical fiction writer. I don't love all historical fiction. I don't like books set in wartime. Like, I don't like reading about Europe in the 1940s. It's just not my thing, for example, when a lot of historical fiction is set. But the ones that I do love, which is like the Regency era, Victorian era, Edwardian era, and then, as I said, like the Age of Discovery, I love all that. And she has a lot of books set in like the early 1900s as well, in different countries. So I really want to come back to her work. As I said, I've added a lot of them to my TBR, and I really want to come back to them. Then, keeping in the historical fiction genre, I feel like I got suggested this on Goodreads when I was looking at, like, you know how you read a book and then you scroll down and it says other books you may like? I feel like that's how I found this, and it's the Stalking Jack the Ripper book. It's part of a series by Kerry Maniscalco, I think her name is, yeah. And this is the first one. It's a YA mystery series, so it's quite light on the mystery elements, but it's set again in it's in London. It's all about like society and propriety and that sort of propriety. So it must be like the early 1900s or I think it's the late 1800s actually. Which again, great era to read about. It's about a female main character who is essentially trying to shed the gender norms of that era, and she wants to become a forensic pathologist like her uncle and do what are they called? Autopsies, that's what I'm looking for. And then she kind of gets involved in a bit of like an underground thing and is, as the name suggests, stalking the Jack the Ripper murderer. So it's kind of like a fantasy or fiction take on crimes that happened in the past. So you'll see, I've read the second book in April, and it's about a different crime that happened in the past. And then obviously there's like the fiction twist on it. So I really liked it. I rated it 3.5 stars. It was nothing that blew me away. Like, it wasn't the best thing I've ever read, but I did look forward to going into the next one. There is like an overarching story between the main characters that happens, as well as the like the mysteries that they're solving. So yeah, I liked it. It was good, and I enjoyed the female lead like going against what was expected of her at the time. I think that was really good to read about. So I've just realized I don't have my March wrap up here, which I also don't have my April one, so I'm gonna have to print both of those out. But essentially this is my now March wrap up section. So my favorite book, Glow of the Everflame. My least favorite, I didn't put a least favorite because while yes, this is technically the book that I rated the lowest, it wasn't my least favorite. It was just that I read so like other good books this month, and it just didn't feel right to put this as my least favorite because it wasn't. I still really enjoyed it. My surprise was the whole Kindred's Curse saga. As I said, I was dreading reading it for some reason, and it turned out to be the most incredible thing. 5-star reads was all the Kindred's Curse books. I read no books less than 300 pages, which kind of shows, like, I really read some big ones. 300 to 500 pages was 60% of my reads, and then 40% were over 500. So I feel like that's pretty big. I read like big books. And then my summary, I've just got the month that I discovered my new Roman Empire and then was ruined after. A lot of long books kept my books finished low, which, yeah. So essentially, I found my new Roman Empire and then I went off the deep end after. Like, that's pretty much what happened. So yeah, that was March, like a really good content quality wise month. I just didn't read a whole lot. So let's move on into April. Okay, so moving into April, which was my best ever reading month. And I say best ever, I've been doing this for like since the start of this year, so 4 months. But it's still exciting. So starting with the stats, I read 10 books, including one DNF, which is my first ever DNF, so we'll come back to that. 4,133 pages read, which is my biggest by quite a margin. I read 27 out of 30 days, and my average rating was 3.5 star, which feels low, but I don't feel like I had a shit reading month. I don't know. Looking back, I don't feel like, oh, I really had some shitters there. I did go on a roller coaster. Like, I was up and I was down and I was up and I was down, but I don't feel like I had a shit reading month overall. So, that number interests me. So, looking at my story graph, yeah, that's what it's called. As I said, 10 books, 4,100 pages, average rating 3.5. The average book length was 413, and again, I read 100% fiction because I don't read non-fiction. Of that, my books were categorized. I read 7 romance, 5 contemporary, 4 historical, 3 sports, which is weird for me. I'm not a sports girly in terms of reading. I love sport outside of reading. And 2 were categorized as fantasy. So, the first part of the month I was reading Hunting Prince Dracula, which is the second book to the Jack the Ripper. I can't think what the series name is called, but it's the second book to that one, and that took me a while to finish. And then I picked up the Chestnut Springs series, which I'll go through a little bit more in a minute, but essentially it took me 2.5-ish days on average to read each one. So I read Flawless, Heartless, Powerless, Reckless, and Hopeless. And then I had my DNF book here, which is called Strange Beasts. I read Enchantra, which is one of my most anticipated books of the year. I read The Mistletoe Countess, and then The Cairo Curse. So, just like a good reading month. I was just like I was churning through books. I was like ready to move on to the next one. I was excited. I guess because I didn't really have like a 5-star wow, insane moment like I did in March to then put me into a bit of a tiz, so it kind of helped, I guess, which is funny. I was kind of just looking for the next read each time. So those are my stats. This is then the first book that I read, so it is it's called Hunting Prince Dracula, and again it's in that same series. This one I rated 3 stars, and I definitely didn't love it as much as I liked this one, which seems funny because this one I rated 3.5 stars, so it's only a ½ star different, but this one does feel quite far behind, if that makes any sense. This is set in Romania, and as the name suggests, it is around the Prince Dracula serial killer that existed in Romania. And this one for me just dragged. It took me a long time to read a book that's not that long. That's like a whole week, which is a long time for me. I read very quickly. And it just it just dragged. I wasn't looking forward to it. I was making myself read it because I'm like, no, you need to get through this book. I want to move on. And I don't know, I wasn't engaged in the story. The characters were not very likable. Like, aside from our two main characters, the other characters in this one I didn't really like compared to the first book. The overall story, I don't know. I didn't mind it. It's still a good series and I like the premise. I just didn't particularly like this one as much. I will pick up the next other books in the series, but after this one I've kind of put it to the side to move on to other things, and I'll come back eventually. And then we move into my cowboy romance era. So that one kind of sticks out, but other than that, I read all 5 Chestnut Springs books. I read the Gold Rush Ranch series in January and I really enjoyed them, and everyone said that's her worst series. So I was like, okay, Chestnut Springs has got to be pretty good. And I finished up this book and I'm like, I don't know what to read. I don't know what direction to go in. I don't know what genre to look at. And I'm like, you know what? You own these 5 books. Let's start the first one and see how we go. And then, as what happened with Gold Rush Ranch, I read the first one. I'm like, okay, I need to know what happens next. And then I need to know what happens next. And then I need to know what happens next. And everyone that I know is like, Heartless. You've got to read Heartless. That's the best one. Like, okay, I'll read Heartless. And then it just, I don't know, it spiraled out of control and I read all 5 within pretty much a week. Yeah, just over a week it took me to finish all 5. So, I have a somewhat controversial ranking order of the books and the couples. So we're going to go through what I thought of each book. I'd like to hear what you think in the comments. I'm interested because beforehand all I saw was like Heartless, 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 Heartless. Which, don't get me wrong, I loved that book. But they weren't my favourite. So, first of all, we have Flawless. And this is Rhett and Summer. I put like the couple's name because I cannot fucking remember which couple goes with which book. So, Rhett and Summer was, I rated 4 stars. Yes, I really, really liked Rhett and Summer. I liked the city girl meets like country guy. That was a really cool, I don't know if that's a trope or it's obviously like a theme and it does happen in books. So I really enjoyed that. I liked her really like softening to him and like Rhett really winning her over. I liked Rhett as a character. I thought he was strong but without being overbearing. I liked the drama with Summer's family, and I just thought like it was a solid, lusty cowboy romance. That's what I've written. Like 4 stars, exactly what I want to pick up a cowboy romance and read. And I was thinking, okay, if we've started here and people only say things are better, this is going to be pretty good, right? Then I picked up Heartless, which is Willa and Cade, and I rated this 4.5 stars, and on my Goodreads review I wrote, the closest to a 5-star a cowboy romance could ever be for me, which is funny because as you'll see I rated another one 5 stars, but at the time I thought this was the best a cowboy romance could be. It's the single daddy and nanny trope, which I have no interest in children. I don't want them. I don't want to be around them. They're just not for me. And so I was thinking like, oh, a single dad, I couldn't care less. I don't want to read about it. But I actually loved it. I actually even loved the scenes with Willa and, is his name Luke? I can't remember. Luke, I think. The kid. I actually even loved those scenes, which really, really surprised me because, as I said, I'm not interested in that in real life. And that is like what won me over. And then obviously that's what wins Cade over, is he sees her with his kid. I wasn't expecting the accidental pregnancy. I didn't love that. I feel like that didn't need to be the reason that they got together. But I also didn't hate it, so I don't know. That's why I rated it 4.5, not 5, because I feel like they could have got together without that and it kind of cheapened it a little bit. But I can see why everyone loves it and that loves them as a couple. I really do. Then we moved on to Powerless, and I have discovered I am not a friends to lovers girly. That is not my trope. I think it's awkward. I think it's uncomfortable. I think the, like, I say tension is just weird when they're like, they get too close to each other, but they're like, haha, like, we shouldn't, we're friends. I don't need to read about that. I think it's, I don't know. I get secondhand embarrassment. I cringe. I didn't love it. I liked them as characters, and I liked the story. I really liked that she was set up for a wedding that she didn't want to be in, and they went on a road trip together, and they've got a lot of history, but I just didn't like the friends to lovers. That's not a trope that does it for me. So unfortunately, this one I rated 3 stars, but I did really like the spicy scenes in this one. I feel like they were written, once they got rid of the weird, awkward friends thing, they were good together. I liked them. Then, if you know me and my book taste, this probably isn't a surprise, but it was a major surprise to me because Reckless, I rated 5 stars and is hands down my favorite book and my favorite couple of the series, which actually does seem a bit weird because it also is the accidental pregnancy, and this happens at the start of the book, so it's the whole book. However, I am the #1 simp for the he falls first for the icy female main character trope. That has my name written all over it. If you didn't know, A Court of Silver Flames is my favorite book of all time. And what happens in that book? Oh, Cassian falls first for Nesta, who is the icy, bitchy female main character. Hello, it's a theme here with me. This is my shit. This is what I want to read about. And I had no idea it was a thing until I put 2 and 2 together and read this. And then I was like, oh, okay, that's why I love Silver Flames so much, because it's the same thing. So, Theo falls first for Winter and then cracks her. She's this icy, pardon the pun, character that nobody likes, nobody understands her, and he cracks her. And she's actually this amazing person who's just like, got her walls up. I don't know, it was incredible. I loved everything about it. It was emotional when Theo finds out that he has a daughter that he doesn't know about, and like gut-wrenching and beautiful, and this is a fucking cowboy romance book, and I was like weeping and like yelling, and it was insane. I do see a lot of love for Theo specifically as like a Elsie Silver man, but I don't see enough love for this book and for Winter and Theo as a couple, because they're my #1. No one comes close, really. Like, they are my favorite. And then finally we finished off with Hopeless, and I gave this 3.5 stars because generally I do like the broken man being fixed by the female. That's a trope I enjoy. However, I didn't love the female. I didn't love Bailey. I think it was all about how, woe is me, my family name is this, and my brothers are this, and it was just too much. I'm like, okay, I get it. You've had a shit life. You still have a shit life. But I'm reading a romance, and I want it to be more about the two of you. So I did enjoy it. I liked Beau. I liked reading about his trauma. If you've read the Gold Rush Ranch series, A Photo Finish is my favorite book from that one, and that's also like a military guy with lots of trauma. So I do like that in a romance book, but yeah, I just didn't love the female main character, but I rated it 3.5 stars, so it was still good. I feel like that's, I need a breath after that. That's a lot. That was my Chestnut Springs. So read. So Winter and Theo, Willa and Cade, and Rhett and Summer are very close together. And then Bailey and Beau, and then Jasper and Sloane. So let me know what you think. I know y'all are going to disagree with me, but that's okay. This is my planner, my reading journal. Then we moved into one of my most anticipated books of the year, new releases, and that was Enchantra. So I read Phantasma at the end of last year, and I was so excited for Enchantra. And I mean, you can see the title, A Huge Disappointment. I am still floored. I finished this probably a week ago now at this point, and I am still floored. I don't know what happened. And I don't get it, because all the reviews I'm seeing are amazing. I'm like, did I read the same fucking book? Like, from Phantasma, this not even close. Phantasma was so rich in like the world building and the setting and the gothic vibes and the trials and the life or death, you know, there was high stakes. And this one was like this weird game of hide and seek where nothing happens. It's the same thing every round. And she's just chased with this knife. I don't know. I literally feel like I read half a book. I don't understand. It did nothing for me. I really tried to, like, I wanted to rate this 2 stars. And I was like, no, take your, like, disappointment goggles off and rate it as a book on its own. And so I've ended up on 3 stars. But I still really, really, really want to put it at 2 stars because I was so disappointed. I don't know, the love story was, like, I don't know, I don't normally mind forced proximity and not arranged marriage, that's the wrong word. Forced marriage, marriage of convenience, that's what I'm looking for. But this was just, I don't know, I'm really lost for words. But again, every review I've seen has loved it. And I'm like, what? Did I literally get the wrong book? Because it was awful. Like, it really, the more I think about it, the more I really should be rating this 2 stars because I didn't enjoy it at all. I don't know. I really don't know what to say. If you've read this and you like it and you also loved Phantasma, I would love to know, like how are you, like, going from Phantasma to this? Please tell me, because I just don't see it. I don't know. I didn't like Genevieve either. I really liked that she's a spectre. I think her ability is really cool. And I think she uses it once at the start of the book and then never again. So it's like, why was she set up to be this really cool like species, I guess, and then just not used again? Like, why did we do that? Anyway, that's got me real fired up. So yeah, that was a real disappointment. And then after that, I was like, okay, what the hell do I read? And then in that time, I had been approved for a ARC on NetGalley, but I didn't realize it's the 4th book in a series, and I haven't even read the first one. So I'm like, okay, fine, you know what? And it comes out in July, so I've got to read it in June and do my review. So I'm like, okay, you know what, fine. I'm gonna read this series. I started reading this series and I fell in love with it. It is like Bridgerton at Christmas time. It's all about, like, propriety, not tree, and an arranged marriage and the, you know, society expectations, and it literally was like Bridgerton. However, they started talking about God and him a lot. And I'm like, hold on a minute, something's going on here. This is not normal. Which I'll come back to in a minute. But anyway, I ended up loving it. I rated this book 4.5 stars because the romance was the most sweet, beautiful, like, kicking your feet romance with absolutely no spice, which again comes back to it. I'll go through in a minute. It was set at Christmas, so I feel like if you read it at Christmas time, it would have been perfect, but I still had a great time anyway. It also had, like, a hint of, like, a mystery thrown in. Like, I don't know what genre it is. Historical, yes. Fiction, maybe, yes. Romance, a little bit. But it also had a mystery, which was cool. A lot of literary references as well, which I feel like if you like the classics, you would probably really like this. But I didn't realize this was classified as Christian fiction, which I don't have a problem with, and I don't want to get in trouble here, but I am the least religious person you'll ever meet. It is not something that interests me. I do not want anything to do with it. And so But as I was reading and I kept getting referencing to him and he in capital letters, I'm like, okay, there's something going on here. And I looked it up and it's a Christian book. So I have nothing wrong with that because, as I said, I rated it 4 stars. However, I just didn't know that going in. So there is a lot of religious language in this book, which I say if you're not into that, don't read it, but I'm not into that and I still loved it. It was just like something to be aware of. So it's a Christian fiction book, apparently. My first ever. I stumbled across it, but I really enjoyed the story. I loved the characters, I loved the romance, but it makes perfect sense why it was fade to black because it's Christian fiction, obviously. Then I went straight on to reading the second book, which is called The Cairo Curse, and I thought we were in for an absolute 5 out of 5 banger here because it's my favorite couple from this, it's the couple from this book, which I love so much. However, they go to Egypt for their honeymoon for the Age of Discovery. Hello, as I mentioned before, my favorite shit. Unfortunately, this one just didn't hit quite as much. I gave it a 3.5 star. I still enjoyed it. I just didn't love it as much as this one. And I don't know if it's because with this one it was so unexpected. It came out of nowhere. And after such a disappointing read up here, was this rating probably affected by that? I don't know. But this one kind of brought it back down a little bit. There wasn't as much romance in this one, and again I say romance as in romance and not spice, but there wasn't even much romance in this one, and I feel like we got a little carried away with the mystery side of things. So the whole book pretty much was about this mystery, and there was so many characters to keep up with different names, obviously, and I often found myself having to go back a page and like, hold on, who said that, who was that, who did, like, there was so many people to keep track of. It got a bit overwhelming. Whereas in this book, the mystery probably takes place like the last 30% of the book, so it's not as crazy, whereas this was the whole book. I did enjoy it. It is set in, as I said, Egypt during that time, which is my favorite. So I loved the setting. I loved the references to Egypt and that sort of thing, but it just didn't quite hit as much, unfortunately, but still a 3.5 star. Then we have my first ever DNF, and I actually read this book in here. So I read Enchantra and was disgusting. No, I didn't. I read it before this. I read it up here. And then I just went, no, you know what? I really want to read Enchantra. And then Enchantra disappointed me. So anyway, this was my book club pick for April, which we're not having such a great track record for book club. If you remember, that's my favorite books. Here. January, I rated 2.5 star and I fucking hated the book. February, I rated 4 star and I liked it, so we're going well there. March, I didn't read because I don't read non-fiction. And then April, I DNF'd. So we're not going so well with book club. This is the first book that I have ever DNF'd in my entire life. I normally trudge through no matter how much I dislike a book because I'm like, I still want to know what happens in the end. I could not have cared less what happens in this book. I truly... I don't give a fuck. I didn't even look up what happened because the story meant nothing to me. I have not even participated in any of the discussion. I have not read anything. I could not care any less. I think I got to like 35 or 40% and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. It's making me not want to read. I don't want to pick it up. I don't want to know. That's a DNF. Cut it off. And then I get to use this cute DNF sticker that I made, so we all win. My description pretty much sums it up. A whole lot of fancy words equating to a whole lot of nothing. This book tried to use fancy, words and descriptions, so much so that like you'd spend a whole page describing what the room looked like, that I actually forgot what was going on and why we were in that room. We need to set the scene and I enjoy like a rich description and I like to imagine it. but there was so many descriptive words for the same thing that I'm like, hold on, what are we doing here again? Why are we in this place? And so again, I had to keep going back and reading, like flipping a page and being like, wait, who's this? What's going on? Because all we were doing was describing things. Like just describing things. I tried the audiobook, which was maybe even worse. And I tried the Kindle and I just was like, no more. No. So yeah, that's my first ever DNF. I do not recommend it. It was probably the worst book I've ever picked up. So that was the month of April. As it says here, it was a roller coaster. I read a bit of everything this month, including my first ever Christian fiction. A mixed bag overall, some big hits and some big misses. A big hype up also became a giant disappointment. So it really was all over the place. My favorite was Reckless. My least favorite was Strange Beasts. My biggest surprise was The Mistletoe Countess. My only 5-star read was Reckless. I read no books under 300 pages. I read 89% were between 300 and 500, and then only 11% were over 500, which I actually don't know which book was over 500 in this. But anyway, that is my March and April reading wrap up. I hope you enjoyed this format of things. But yeah, let me know what you think. Again, I'd love to know your order of Chestnut Springs if you have read them. And yeah, thank you all for watching and I'll catch you in my next reading video. Bye!